For those of you that don't know me, my name is Josh Reese. I am the account manager at Intrust for Airstech. So the company that you probably heard from some of our technicians and stuff before that supplement Ryan and Linda on the IT side of things. And we also, in addition to account manager, I also do several of these trainings. There's a sheet that you guys should have there printed out over there that have bullet points on a lot of what we'll go over. There's also some links and things like that that Linda will send out afterwards because technology hasn't advanced to the point yet to where you can click a link on a piece of paper and open it on your computer. A lot of what we go over today is probably going to be a little bit of a refresher and rehash of the cybersecurity training that was done 2 years ago, or if you've been hired since then that you've had to watch as part of your orientation. There is some new information on there. And really, we want to do a refresher, introduce you to some of the new things, and also just keep it fresh on your brain because it's really about more than just your account and things like that when it comes to compromises. There's potential for it to affect the company as a whole, other employees within the company. Compromises that take effect here can affect your personal life. Compromises that take effect in your personal life can bleed over and affect things in your working environment as well. So you're going to hear me talk about several things that have to do with personal stuff as well as work stuff, because a lot of it's applicable to both in this day and age. Everyone's accessing work materials on their home, on their phone, things like that. So we want to make sure that you're covered everywhere. So the point of today is really to educate you, keep you up to date on some of the new things, remind you on some of the old ones, motivate you to really take a proactive approach to cybersecurity and things like this, and maybe scare you just a little bit because that's the best motivator. And to speak to that point, I actually have probably the biggest cyber attack incident that I've encountered in the 4 years since I've been at Intrust, and probably that anybody at Intrust has encountered, happened to a client of mine just last month. This client is a client. They have several hundred employees, active and former, and they just recently started using our services over the past several months, more for security and monitoring support. Same thing we do for you guys, because we found, due to some previous cybersecurity incidents, that their IT staff wasn't really doing all that they should have been doing. They weren't patching some servers, they didn't have antivirus on a lot of their servers, and it led to some compromises. Last month, they became aware that 3 of their employees had a combined $471,000 withdrawn from their 401ks without them authorizing it. What happened is they work with a third-party 401k company, and the process has always been there's a sheet to be faxed to that 401k company that requires name, address, birthday, signature, social security number, and the amount that you want to withdraw. All of these employees were over 59 and a half years old, so they were eligible for withdrawal. None of the withdrawals were more than what was in the 401k account. Along with the faxed in forms were voided checks for bank accounts open in these people's names as well. One of the bank accounts was in San Francisco, one of the bank accounts was in Missouri. None of the bank accounts were opened by the individuals. The person responsible went above and beyond that and even called the 401k company on the number on the form to verify that they received the request and were processing it. From there, the 401k company forwards it over to my client's HR department, and they approve it without verifying with the employee that they actually want this to happen. The only way they discovered it is because the third guy that was hit checks his 401k balance every month and realized that he was $250,000 short on his retirement fund. And he's planning on retiring in about a year and a half. So we started doing some digging, and they did have an email compromised back in January where about a dozen accounts were compromised at Access, some of which were HR employees. They also had a virus that spread to one of their servers that hadn't been patched in 2 years that specifically looks for financial related information. Turns out that the HR employees, that there was one admin account to the 401k portal that would have had all the information required to make this happen, and all of the 4 people that had access shared the one account. In the past, when they've reset the password to this account, they've emailed the password to each other. So you have email compromises where this password was in one of the mailboxes, and best case scenario, 3 people are out $471,000 of their 401k that has to be recovered. Only one of them has been recovered so far, and the FBI is working on it. Worst case scenario, all their past and present employees that are in this portal have their personal identifiable information out there for use, and it doesn't go away. This is something that can affect these individuals for the rest of their life. So social security numbers, birthdays, things like that, that can creep up. Just because the breach happened now and it affected these guys now doesn't mean that this information can't be used on these individuals later down the line, open bank accounts, file tax returns, things like that. So that's why we really want to kind of do a refresher, go over some of the things we've talked about before, bring it to light, make sure that you guys are proactively looking at this stuff, because it does happen, and it's not a matter of if something like this is going to happen, it's a matter of when and how we can best prevent that from happening. So it might seem like a little bit of onslaught of information here in a short amount of time, especially since we have back-to-back sessions here coming up. If you guys have any questions at all, though, don't hesitate to ask me after. For those of you on the call, chime in and just let me know. Or if you think of something at a later time, just let Linda know and shoot me an email, and I will be happy to answer that. So our CEO at Entrust and myself have been doing this training for about 4 years, and we thought things were bad then. This is a graphic from informationisbeautiful.com that actually shows kind of a visualization of compromises from 2014. And you can see that there's a couple big ones that are in the hundreds of millions and things like that, but there's a lot of small ones. Fast forward to last year, and you really can't read it anymore because everything's large, everything's frequent, everything's in the hundreds of millions. The website actually had to redesign its interface recently to more accurately show it, because they were getting to a point where the data was just unbearable on the old model. So why is this happening, and why are we talking about this? What's leading to all this? As a refresher from the last session, there's really been 3 game changers in the world of cybersecurity incidents, one of which is the cloud. When we talk about the cloud, we're just talking about a warehouse somewhere that has a bunch of shipping containers with servers in them. And in a matter of minutes, I can go online and I can purchase a server in Hong Kong or Panama or Thailand or anywhere else in the world and use that as my base of operations for these cyber attacks. In a matter of minutes, if somebody's onto me, I can shut that server down and spin up a new one elsewhere and use that to deploy the malicious software and do all these things. So that's really the big one, and this is all it is. It's computers loaded in these, and we shut it down and pay a monthly premium, and it's open to anybody. Anybody can run these servers. The other big aspect is the Onion Router, otherwise known as the dark web. And if you're not familiar, it was created by the U.S. government to communicate with people in lockdown countries such as the Middle East, North Korea, things like that, where communication is a lot more strictly monitored, so that they could communicate with news organizations, governments, things like that in the outside world. Like anything else, though, it was determined that it could be used for anonymity by people with more malicious intent, and you started to see marketplaces like this pop up. The Silk Road was the first instance of it, where it was a marketplace where if you could think of it, you could probably buy it. Drugs, weapons, people to take out contract killings, contraband, and bootleg material, you name it, you could buy it. The guy that ran it went under the moniker Dread Pirate Roberts. If anybody's seen The Princess Bride, it's modeled after that. Much like in The Princess Bride, it was designed to be a moniker that was transferred on from individual to individual. And the individual that ran this was grooming some of his associates to take over when he was ready to get out. Unfortunately, though, he became a bit paranoid that they were going to try to push him out sooner than he wanted to, so he used his own website to try to hire people to kill his associates that he was training. Unbeknownst to him, he was hiring undercover FBI agents, and he got caught. Now, when people think of hackers, the stereotypical image is some guy in a hoodie in his basement, typing on a computer with a bunch of letters and numbers on the screen. In reality, it's not that far off. You just don't need the hoodie, because this is the Dread Pirate Roberts. He was a 24-year-old college student named Ross Ulbrecht, who's now serving life in prison without chance of parole as a result of the murder for hire plot. And you might say, that's a cool story, but what does it have to do with me? Why do I care? Well, it's because when people steal identities and credit card informations and things like that, this is where it ends up. If you get your passport stolen or your ID stolen or things like this, it's going up for sale on a marketplace such as the Silk Road. When you see a credit card skimmer at a gas station on the news, somebody locally isn't using those credit card numbers because it's a lot easier to trace somebody locally that's using that. Even if you're just doing online shopping, they can trace the IPs that those came from and get it to somebody in your geographic area. This way, they can upload hundreds of these credit card informations and people across the world can purchase them, and it makes it a lot harder for them to track down and a lot harder to detect, and it could go a lot longer without being realized. The third big boom that's led to cybercrime is virtual currency. It started out with money packs and kind of prepaid cards, things like that. You've seen a lot of the Google Play gift cards, the Amazon, the iTunes gift cards. More so now we're getting into the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the like. There's dozens of them that are popping up. They make it very easy for these cyber criminals to get paid without ever knowing who's actually getting paid. These are internationally recognized funds that are all digitally transferred. There's no personal information tied to it. It's all tied in secure strings of data. And once you pay them, then you have no idea who it's actually going to, where it's actually going to, because it's not tied to any normally regulated banking system. So again, the massively scalable computing with the cloud, the untraceable worldwide communications with the dark web, and the virtual international currency are really what's facilitating this global cybercrime wave that we're in right now. And if you look at the past 30 years or so, it really took about 20 years for it to get to the point where there were 20 million different variants of malware and viruses that we've seen in the wild. So it grew pretty slowly, but in the past 10 years alone, you can see that it's really boomed from 47 million to almost a billion here at the start of this year. It grew 10 million just by the end of 2018 in the first 2 weeks of 2019. So I have no doubt that we're going to be looking at this in over a billion known variants of malware in the wild by the end of this year. A report released by the insurance company Beasley back in March stated that last year across 3,300 of their clients' incidents, that 71% of the ransomware attacks targeted small to mid-sized businesses. When I say small to mid-sized businesses, I'm talking from 5-10 users all the way up to several hundred users. I'm not talking about large-scale corporations like Google and Apple and Amazon and things like that. Those types of companies have the finances and the resources to better invest in their cybersecurity and better detect things and be more proactive, whereas oftentimes small mid-sized businesses don't have that same luxury and things can go undetected. They're a lot less knowledgeable. With an average ransom demand across these of $116,000, the highest was an $8.5 million request, and the highest paid was $935,000. And that's typically because you get the small mid-sized businesses that might not have good backup solutions or recovery options, and they have no choice but to pay the ransom because that's the only way they're getting their files back. Most malware exploits known vulnerabilities. It's very simple for the cyber criminals to manage their malware the same way that Intrust manages your workstations here. They can, once they get the software installed, they can see what you're doing. When you're doing it, they can push malware to your computer. They can manage what's being pushed. They can update it the same way that we do. That's why it's key to keep your operating systems up to date. We manage your operating system updates here for you guys at work, but it's key that you reboot your computers at least once a week. That's why we say that. That's why there's pop-ups that come up sometimes on that, because those are key security updates. As those are getting pushed, these known vulnerabilities are getting patched. If you don't reboot, those patches often aren't getting finalized. And if you're not rebooting and those getting finalized, then sometimes subsequent patches won't be able to be installed on them as well. So that's why it's key to reboot your computer once a week. Do the same thing on your home computer. Search Windows updates in the search bar on your toolbar or in your Windows menu and see what it's set to. If it says there's a bunch of updates to run, run them. If it lets you set it up automatically, set it up automatically. You'll have the option of it rebooting automatically if you want to. You can manually reboot. It'll notify you like this. But it's the easiest thing you can do to prevent these vulnerabilities. This is a third-party tool called Sumo, Software Updates Monitor. that also looks for third-party utilities, Adobe, iTunes, different things that people have on their computer. Those also get vulnerabilities that you have to patch sometimes. If you don't use it, you never access it, delete it from your computer, because all it is a vulnerability waiting to happen if cyber criminals detect a flaw in its code. If you do use it, make sure you're keeping it updated. If you open up Adobe and it says there's an update, update it. If you open up iTunes and there's an update, update it, because a lot of times those are security patches. However, if you are on a website and you're trying to watch a video, think back to the Bengals games when they were always blacked out and people were going to a bunch of third-party sites trying to watch them, and it says you need to update your Flash to view this. Don't click on those links on those sites to update your Flash. Go directly to Adobe. Go directly to the Flash website. Download it from there, because oftentimes cyber criminals will create false links that look like you're going to where you need to and installing an update, but you're really installing malware on your computer. It's also key to use endpoint security software. Again, we manage that here for you guys in the office, but it's equally as important to have it at home. And you may not think so, but your phones can get viruses the same way that computers can. Phones are essentially just mini computers in your pocket these days anyway, so it's equally as important to have antivirus on those. There's any number of them that you can use. There's Norton, Symantec, Webroot, McAfee. There's some listed on your sheet there. What I do recommend, though, is don't just rely on a free version of it. The free versions will do good for checking you right now if you run a manual scan, but they're not going to proactively do anything. They're not going to run routine scans on your phone or on your computer to make sure that you're perpetually safe. Only the paid versions will do that. So it will be required to sign up for a subscription to ensure that you're actually safe from it. A lot of them will offer both apps for your phone and your computer to install under the one subscription model, and most of them are fairly cheap these days. It's important because ultimately you're being targeted. You've been targeted. You've probably been compromised at some point. And at the end of the day, the reason we're having this conversation is Intrust and Aristat can do as much as we want, or throw as much money into the infrastructure and the security and tools and measures as possible. But at the end of the day, you guys sitting in this room and the people on the call are the best and worst line of defense when it comes to these incidents, because so many of them these days aren't tied to somebody driving by down the street in a van trying to connect to your network and get in through your firewall. It's all social engineering based. They're sending you emails. They're generating messages to you to try to get you to help them break into your network. Everybody's familiar with phishing emails, whether it be a shipping label that you're printing or a request for an update on a file or something like that. One of the most common ones that we're starting to see grow now, and this affects you guys, is voicemail to email. Everyone's going to voice over IP phone systems these days. You guys just went to one here last year. And key features part of that is voicemail to email. It's a standard built in with all of them. Cyber criminals know this. And we've started to see an uptick in fake voicemail to email emails. You guys should always get yours from evolvebusinesssolutions.com. That's CBTS's Evolve phone platform. Send yourself a test voicemail, see what it comes up as, look at the format, look at the sender, make sure that in the future, if you receive a voicemail to email message in your email inbox, that you're verifying it's coming from that sender. It's very hard to block these because they generate them from any number of them, and we can't fully block them without blocking the actual good ones as well. But these fake ones are going to come with a link to an audio file or a fake audio file attachment that all it is ransomware waiting for you to run on your computer. So make sure that if you receive a voicemail to email message, that it's coming from that Evolve Business Solutions address and it's matching the format of your legitimate ones. Another big one is following major cyber attacks. These pop up all the time, where such as the Equifax one that is going on right now, where they just released the settlement website where you can go and see if you're eligible for either a couple years of monitoring or $125 plus each hour that you spent trying to recover things like that. Cyber criminals know this, and dozens of dummy sites pop up. You'll get emails that say, or people will share posts on Facebook that will say, hey, go to this website to see if you qualify, to claim your payment, things like that. Some of them are just links to software that's going to install. Some of them want you to sign in and put in information such as social security number, birthday, and stuff like that, so you can further get compromised. In those circumstances, if there is a widely publicized breach and you are worried that you might be effective, don't respond to emails that you get about it. Don't click on links via social media that you get about it. Go directly to that company's website, and they'll have information on it about how you go through those processes, because that's the only way through the first party means that you're going to verify you're not getting duped. Be wary of links that you receive via email, especially if you aren't expecting them. Looks like it's a failed Amazon order, but it's not actually an order number link here that you're clicking. If you hover over it, you see that there's a .ru, which is a Russian domain. It's probably a dummy website that looks exactly like an Amazon login page, and when you go there, it is going to ask you to sign in and steal your credentials on that. Any links that you receive in emails, you can do this with. We do have some filtering on your links here in the office, but if you receive things on personal emails and stuff like that, you want to be just as wary. Best practice is if you receive an update from a service that you sign up with or something like that that wants you to click a link and go to it, best way to verify, open your web browser, go directly to paypal.com, go directly to amazon.com, directly to Dropbox. Sign into your account, because it's going to have the same notifications there as you're getting via email to verify anything that you're getting. In manufacturing, something we see a lot is people trying to pretend that like they're soliciting your business, where they will come across your company and determine what you do, and they'll craft an email to you that says, hey, I have these schematics, or I have this job that needs done. Here's a link to a folder with images of the site. I wanted to see how you might be able to help me. It's not actually images. If you look at the link, it's a .exe file, which is an executable. So that's, once you click it, it's going to install software on there. If you receive any kind of unsolicited stuff like that just via email, be wary of it. If there's no secondary information such as phone number or signature or things like that, do a double take, maybe not respond to it. If they really want, they'll call, they'll get back to you. Sometimes if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Malvertising is big around shopping season and on kind of some secondary third-party, less legitimate sites where you'll get ads that pop up. Don't click on those ads. They're more often than not taking you to dummy websites that want you to put in information that they can use to compromise you further or install malware on your computer. Malvertising doesn't just hit kind of random third-party sites. New York Times and sites of the like have had ads slip through their filters before that they've been hit with, where users that visit their web page click a link on one of these ads that looks like it's legitimate and they get infected. We use AdBlock Plus here on your computers at work. It's free for home use. Install it. It'll filter out a lot of those. Ultimately, the goal is to get you to run malicious software in these circumstances with ransomware. Even Office files can be malicious, and this is an extra important note. If you ever receive a Word, Excel, PowerPoint attachment, especially when you're not expecting in an email, and you open it up and it wants you to run a macro, never, ever, ever run the macro. Macros are just programming features built into Office that allow you to run certain tasks and automate certain processes. It also allows a cybercriminal to install ransomware on your computer. If you do get an email, we see it a lot on kind of like invoices and stuff like that. An Excel document sent as an invoice, you open it up, it wants you to run a macro or a Word document. If you get that, close out of it, turn your computer off, let them know, let Intrust know. Chances are if you didn't enable it, you're safe, but we want to verify. If you did enable it, you're definitely probably infected, and it's already started. It's calling back to its home server to initiate the second process and do what it needs to do. You're going to get a message like this most likely, or if you've gotten ransomware another way, where it says, you've been infected, all your files are encrypted, you have X amount of days to pay me X amount of dollars, or else your files are gone forever. Intrust has had several companies that have come to us in this circumstance that didn't have proper backups and disaster recovery solutions, and they needed our help, where ultimately the best course of action was for them to pay the ransom. Of the 3 or 4 that have paid the ransom, all but one did get their files back, but one of them never was able to get it recovered, because at the end of the day, you're still dealing with criminals, and just because they say they're going to give you your files back, there's no law that says they have to. As bad as the ransomware is, Cisco actually ran a study that showed over a 3-year period, $1 billion was generated from ransomware, but $5.3 billion was generated from CEO fraud level and phishing level attacks. That's where we get more into the social engineering. It's becoming much easier to trick the individual than it is to get credentials and exploit weak policies and people not verifying via other means and things like that than it is to get software installed and get people to hold them for ransom. It's not uncommon for people to get an email from the CEO of a company asking them to purchase $1,500 in Google Play gift cards in $200 increments, scratch off the codes on the back and email them to me. It sounds dumb, people fall for it. Sending wire requests, things like that. I can go into LinkedIn right now, and for virtually any company, I can tell you who the owner is, I can tell you who's in their finance, who's in their HR, all these different positions. Chances are I might be able to find their email address. If I can't find their email address, I can go onto their website and find out what their domain name is and use a similar domain or craft the name and send these out. If you look, it's not actually coming from that email address, it's coming from a third party. So look, double check when you get emails, especially any that request financial stuff from internal. Make sure it's actually coming from who it says it's coming from. These are becoming so common, you're seeing them on the news all the time. Local municipalities are getting hit hard lately. There's a big one in Georgia that's been on the news lately where they're getting targeted for these type of events. Another common aspect of this is with manufacturing companies, we'll see that whether through a past compromise here or at a partnership of yours, it becomes aware that you manufacture goods for somebody and they pay you. The cyber criminal realizes this, and instead of aristechsurfaces.com, they purchase it with an L instead of an I in Aristech, so that at a quick glance, it looks like it's similar. They see that Tim has sent emails to Beth over here with invoices, and they just copy that email, copy that signature, copy that invoice, and just change it and say, hey, these are to be routed to this wiring location now, or this Dropbox, or this bank account. And then all of a sudden, Beth doesn't verify that those changes need to actually be made, and she starts sending that information to the cyber criminal, and it can take months sometimes before this is actually realized. One of the biggest instances of this was Ubiquity Networks. They are a technology solutions provider. They are a public company, so they had to file this with their quarterly SEC filing, but they had this exact same thing happen to them, and they sent $46.7 million to an incorrect bank account. And they were only able to recover $8.1 million for that. So it does happen. Now that's a huge fraud. Some companies might not make that much in 5-10 years, but it does happen on a lot smaller scale. This is an example where one of our employees got an email that said it was coming from our CEO. The email address wasn't very well matched, so it was not necessarily something that he was worrying about. He was just at a quick glance responding to the email, though. There is somebody on the other end of these emails oftentimes. They're monitoring for responses. They're going to reply to you. Sometimes before they even make a financial request or give you information about where to send money, what to do, they're going to respond to you 5-6 times to try to sell you on the fact that they are actually who they say they are. I've seen it so far as to where the CEO of a company was compromised, and they did nothing in his actual mailbox. They didn't send any emails at all. What they did instead is they just looked through his mailbox, and they got employee cell phone numbers from signatures. They then created a Google Voice phone number and started texting those employee cell phone numbers saying that, hey, this is so-and-so the president. I need you to do me a favor. I need you to purchase these gift cards. 2 people fell for it because they were getting text messages from the CEO allegedly. So they go multiple ways. Anytime there's financial requests, double verify. Ultimately, they want to compromise your email box in these circumstances. A big common one is Office 365 ones. If you ever receive anything that is a link saying there's a new feature or an issue or something with your Office 365 account, Most of the time, you're not going to get an email like this. You're going to get a pop-up in Outlook. Or you're going to get a notification, or it's going to be us calling you. Anything that has to do with your 365 account here at work, let Linda know, let Intrust know, let us verify on the back end in the portal that there's actually an issue, because we see it all the time where they design login pages that look just like the 365 login page because they want you to put your email credentials in there and steal that information. Once they get your email password, they're doing any number of things to steal those funds. We had a contact that is friends with our owner who owned a property management company. One of their clerks had her email address compromised. They used that account to send out new payment information to all their tenants. It went undetected for 3 months, and $500,000 was routed to this other bank account instead of to the rental property company. And it's a nightmare to try to recover whose fault that is, get it reimbursed, things like that. Be suspicious of every email. It's sad that we have to do it, but you have to do it. Be extra wary of anything that has an attachment or a link in it, especially if it's unsolicited. Worst case scenario, don't click it. Call the person who it's allegedly coming from and verify that it's actually real. They may not even know that they have something that was sent to it. If you do get something and you know it's blatantly suspicious and it's coming from an actual compromised email box of somebody you do business with, call them, call the company they work for, let them know that's happening. I've had to do that several times. That way it suppresses it, because chances are if you're receiving that spam email from that compromised account, other people in your company are as well. Anything financial, again, call them, verify. If you receive a phone call that is allegedly wanting to have you update information or provide information, we'll get it sometimes with bank accounts. You'll get a call that says, we've detected fraudulent activity on your bank account. Can you provide your social, the last 4 of your social and your birthday or something like that? Don't do it. Hang up, call the bank back, and verify that there's actually an alert, because people will just try to spam call and get you that way as well. They'll craft individually targeted ones as well with web beacons. Web beacons are on about 40% of emails you receive. You don't even know it. They're little 1-pixel images that are invisible, and marketing companies use them to determine who's accessing those emails, how long they're reading them for, if they're opening them or just deleting them, what kind of devices, things like that. Cyber criminals do the same thing. They will send you very benign emails that are generic spam, and they'll get information about where you are in the world or in the country, what kind of device you're using. And then this is when you start to get emails that are of the blackmail variety and are pretty generic and just say, hey, I saw you going to this dirty website. I have webcam footage of you. I'm going to send it to all your contacts if you don't send me this amount of money in this amount of days. Sometimes they'll put a previously compromised password in there that they found on the dark web to try to sell it. Chances are, if you're receiving this email, you're probably not compromised in any way. This is the last-ditch effort to just try to fool gullible people with some information that they were able to obtain. But this brings me to a point on be wary of what you have published about yourself out on the internet. Don't publish your email address anywhere. Not on LinkedIn, not on websites. All those websites have ways to message you through it, and then you can communicate that information with people via more secure means after that. If you Google your email address in quotation marks, you can see where it's listed on the internet. Our owner has his in just a couple places that are really hard to get rid of. If you Google mine, all it comes up with is my name on our website, not my email address. I instruct people not to have any of their company email addresses on their website, because those are just email addresses that are out there for somebody to spoof and use to mimic you. One thing that we encountered, our vice president is actually an NFL replay official right now. He used to be a high school official for the state of Ohio football, and he was doing this on himself and searching for his email address a few years ago, and he realized that somebody had mistakenly published the entire directory of high school football officials as a web page instead of as a document internally, and it had addresses, names, phone numbers, permit numbers, email addresses, all this information that now I have all these people's addresses. I can drive to their house and steal their mail and look for PII that I can then use to further compromise their identity. So be very careful about what's out there about you. Don't post every piece of personal information on Facebook. Don't check into every location you go to. All this can be used to spoof who you are. A friend of Tim's had an instance where his social media was compromised. All of his accounts, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And the person that was responsible was in the account for a little bit of time, and over the course of about a week or so, they checked in at various locations overseas, like they were on vacation. And then after about a week of doing this, they then started messaging all of the guy's contacts saying that, hey, I'm on vacation here. I had my wallet stolen. I have no money. I need you to wire me some money. A couple people actually did. It was a nightmare for him to get resolved because you got to contact all these different social media. It's a nightmare to prove that you are actually who you say you are and get it shut down, get it reset, and then you're embarrassingly having to tell every single person you know that this happened and remediate those situations. Which brings me to credential reuse. Don't use the same passwords for everything. It's very common for people to sign up for third-party websites using work email addresses in this day and age. Your work email address is the email that you're using primarily for everything else. You're looking at it the most each day, so it makes sense that you'd want to get updates, notifications, password resets, and stuff to it. But you have a third-party website you're a part of. That third-party website gets compromised. The person responsible gets that aristechsurfaces.com email and recognizes that it's most likely a business. It's not hard for them to guess that you're on Office 365. Everyone is these days. They go to the Office 365 login portal, put in that same username and password. I would venture more often than not, it's going to hit for people because people use the exact same password on everything. Other than that, they have programs and algorithms. They can just adjust one number or add symbols to try to pick up on the variances people usually do. From that point, they're in that company's email server and they're putting notifications on that mailbox for certain financial related things, or they're surfing through it to get contacts and signatures and things like that they can use to further compromise. So your password has been exposed. Mine's been exposed. My Netflix got compromised a couple years ago. I got a notification my password had changed. I hadn't actually done it. I called them, got it reset, but I could see where they were accessing my email from and how frequently and things like that on my Netflix account. Tax returns, to go back to the Equifax thing, it's a big thing around tax return season. You get all these websites that say that they want you to log in as TurboTax or what have you. You sign in, you put those credentials in, then they actually get into the real website using those credentials. You can actually see if you've been compromised in this way. If you go to this website, Have I Been Pwned? It's owned with a P. Put your email address in, your personal or your work. You can see if any websites you've used that email address for have been compromised in breaches. You can set up notifications, but oftentimes it's several years later that they actually become aware because these companies might not be aware, or the cyber criminal just hasn't claimed it yet because they have still been using and going through those credentials. Once they use it for all it's worth or they sell it off, then they brag about it and say that they're the ones that were responsible. So again, use a different password for every account. And when I say that, I don't mean use password 1 for work, password 2 for your bank, password 3 for your Facebook, password 4 for something else. Use different ones. Change the important ones frequently, especially anything that deals with finances, your bank, any investments, things like that, anything that deals with medical information or other personal identifiable information. Change them at least every 6 months, if not every 3 months. And when I change them, don't change it from password 1 to password 2 or password 2 to password 3, because those are all very commonly done things. It can be hard to memorize all those passwords. You don't have to. Use a password manager. Something like LastPass is probably the best one. There's a free instance of it. The premium is only a couple bucks a month. It has a phone app. It has a web add-in. It has a web page. You get one password that you create. All the other passwords you put in here. You're able to generate strong passwords. I have passwords that look like this. I'm never going to have to remember this password. I'm never going to have to enter this password. If I'm going to that website and it's in my password vault, it form fills it from there, but it has two-factor authentication on it that it wants me to verify I actually have access to this password vault and can authorize this password. So I have an app on my phone that pops up with a code that I have to confirm that I'm trying to access this. Multi-factor authentication is a must in this day and age. We're actively rolling it out for you guys here at Aristech right now. You need to get it on anything important or sensitive that you're doing business with. 81% of data breaches deal with stolen and or weak passwords, according to Verizon. Multi-factor authentication is the best mitigating factor for that. Even if they do get your password, then you're getting a notification via an app or a text message or a phone call or however you have it to give you a code that you need to type in to do that. If you know you're not trying to actively access that site, you know your account has been compromised if you're getting those notifications. 365 offers it if you have it for personal email. Google offers it. Pretty much everything should offer it these days. Twofactorauth.org will actually show you big companies that use it and what level of multi-factor they use. Definitely, if you don't have it on your banking account, get it set up today for multi-factor authentication. If you don't have it on medical websites, things like that, get it set up. If the site that has any information that could be used to compromise your identity or compromise your work situation doesn't offer multi-factor authentication, move to a company that does have multi-factor authentication. Get a different bank. Figure out why they don't offer it, or if they're going to offer it, when they're going to offer it, how you can set it up. It's all about layers. It's just like bulletproof glass. The more things you can put in between you and the cyber criminal, the less likely it is that you're going to be compromised. Finally, use monitoring, backups, encryption. When I talk about DNS, it's essentially the white pages for your digital identity. Every website is really just an IP address that's out there. DNS is what that's tied to. Use a service like OpenDNS that monitors those IPs and those websites and determines their legitimacy. There's a free version of it for family use. We use it here on your network. It's going to monitor that traffic. If it sees that you're trying to navigate to a web page that's been flagged as malware, it's going to block it for you because it knows this isn't legitimately Amazon.com that you're clicking on this link in an email to. It's going to a spoofed web page. Provides you a little bit of a safety net there. Back up your home computer and your home files. Carbonite's a good instance of it. It's very cheap on a monthly basis. It offsites these to the cloud. Again, we do this for you guys here in the office, but you want to make sure if you do get compromised and stuff at home that you're secure, that you're going to be able to get those files back. Finally, data encryption. Home computers, especially laptops that you're traveling with, make sure you encrypt the hard drives. It's built in with Windows 10. BitLocker Drive Encryption, just search it in the search bar on your toolbar and you'll come to this page where you can set it up. What BitLocker does is it encrypts your hard drive and essentially it turns it into a brick. If somebody steals your laptop or somebody breaks into your house and tries to access your computer and they don't know your username and password and they're trying to backdoor the BIOS to access files, change anything on the hardware, install anything, put an external hard drive in, anything of the like, it's going to require the BitLocker recovery key, which is a long string of about 30 different letters and numbers that nobody's ever going to know off the top of their head. You're going to want to remember that, write it down, put it into your password vault, put it in your safe, what have you, when you set it up, because if there is hardware changes or anything on your computer that you're doing, you are going to be required for it. But it turns your computer into a brick if it gets stolen as far as the data goes. All the criminal can do is pull the hard drive out and throw it away, and he can't actually access it. When it comes to operating systems too, Windows 7 is going out of support in mid-January of 2020. So if you're not on Windows 10 at home on your personal computer, you want to get onto it by that time because Windows 7 is no longer going to be patched or updated with security updates. We're working on it here for the organization, but just like I said, if you access your personal email at home or you access office files via OneDrive or anything at home and things like that on a personal device and it's not Windows 10, it's not getting patched, it still opens up the company for vulnerability. You don't want to be the person that had their account compromised that led to other people getting compromised, that led to an account that has all this PII data getting access that results in people getting their 401k funds withdrawn. Like I said, it's not just you that compromises can affect, it's everyone else, and you can be affected by everyone else's as well, so you really have to be cognizant of it all the time. And that's about it. Again, a lot of the information is bullet points on the sheet there. Does anybody have any questions for me, whether you're on the call or here in person? No?
Everybody sign in.
I'm okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's about all I have. If you do think of anything, pop up and ask me. I'll be here for about 10 minutes before the next session, or let Linda know later on, and she can forward your questions into me.
Thank you very much again. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Since you guys are in here, and I'll just give you an update. I guess you've noticed we've got Sparkle going on with their phone. I just got off the phone with, since I